So still on the series of grounds for divorce in Nigeria, remember that there is only one ground for dissolution of marriage in Nigeria by virtue of section 15 sub 1 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, and that ground is that the marriage has broken down irretrievably. And we mentioned in our previous videos that there are some facts that must be established by the petitioner for the court to conclude that that marriage has broken down irretrievably. And in our previous videos, we have talked about some of the facts already. First, we talked about adultery. Second, we talked about behavior of the respondent. So if you have not seen those videos, I would advise that you go and see them so that you will enjoy our series as we move forward. And now in today's video, we will be looking at another fact, which is desertion. So desertion is one of the facts, just like adultery and behavior of the respondent, that the petitioner must establish in court for the court to conclude that marriage has broken down irretrievably. Welcome to my channel. This is Law Talks and Gist. If you are seeing my face for the first time, thank you for stopping by. Please click on the subscribe button, like, share, comment, and kindly turn on the notification bell so as to be notified each time there is an upload coming from me. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for always tuning in. You know I love you. If I don't love you, what do I gain? Now let's dive into the video. So a marriage will be regarded as having broken down irretrievably where the respondent has deserted the petitioner for a period of at least 1 year immediately preceding the presentation of the petition. Now, what is desertion? Desertion is the separation of one spouse from the other with an intention on the part of the deserting spouse of bringing cohabitation permanently to an end without reasonable cause or without the consent of the other spouse. That is desertion. And now, to constitute desertion, 4 elements must be present at the same time. You cannot just say there is desertion. There are some elements that must be present for the court to conclude that, oh, this spouse deserted the other. Now, what are those elements? Number 1, de facto separation. Number 2, animus diserendi. I'm going to explain. Calm down. Number 3, lack of just cause for the withdrawal from cohabitation. And then number 4, the absence of consent of the deserted spouse. We are going to dissect them one after the other. So now, what is de facto separation? This implies the bringing to an end of cohabitation by severing all forms of marital obligations. Do I need to explain what marital obligations are again? I don't need to do that. You know the duties that a wife owes the husband, and you also know the duties that a husband owes the wife. So if for any reason any of the spouse stops performing these marital obligations, that will amount to desertion. So that is what we call de facto separation. So under this circumstance, please note that physical withdrawal from the matrimonial home is not the only form of desertion. The spouses can still be under the same roof and desertion is already taking place. So desertion here is not the withdrawal from a place, but from the state of things. Like we have a decided case of worker versus worker. Now, what happened in that case? The couple were still living under the same roof, but the wife had withdrawn. She withdrew to her bedroom, kept her bedroom locked. She would go to work, come back, stay in her room, stopped cooking for the husband. They only communicated via note. When they want to talk, they write notes. So all forms of marital obligations was severed. The husband had to depend on eating outside, doing other domestic chores for himself. So the wife was no longer sleeping in the husband's room. And when there was a petition for divorce, the court held that there was desertion. Because even when they were living in the same house, marital obligations was withdrawn. So where is the marriage? And please note that when the parties are living apart against their will, for instance, if one of the parties is imprisoned, the imprisonment is against their will now, so that will not amount to desertion. And also, where maybe one of the parties is working in another location, the wife is living in the States, the husband is living in another place working, please, that will not amount to desertion. And then we get to the second element, which is animus dicerendi. This means the intention of the deserting spouse to withdraw from cohabitation permanently. So the deserting spouse already has an intention to do that. Please note that there is no intention where the spouse is temporarily absent from the other, for instance, holidays or business. And the same is with where the deserting spouse has the consent of the other spouse. Now, in the case of consent, if this other spouse gave consent and eventually withdraws consent, the moment he withdraws consent, there will be desertion where the other party continues to live apart. I gave you consent to go and do this. I gave you consent to go away. I gave you consent to, you understand? The moment there is withdrawal of consent and the deserting spouse continues in the desertion, then that will be enough. The third element being lack of just cause. There is no reason. You just leave your matrimonial home. You just end cohabitation. You just withdraw from your spouse without any reason. Then that will amount to desertion. But if you can prove that you have a reason for desertion, maybe the spouse committed adultery, and of course, we'll get to that part where we'll talk about bars to petition for divorce. And you don't want it to be established that there was a bar to your petition for divorce. You just leave the house. There is a reason. Maybe your spouse is behaving in such a manner that cannot be reasonably expected to live with. You know, we've talked about that, committed adultery and all manner of things. Those are sufficient reasons for you to desert your spouse. But where you do that without reasonable cause, then it will amount to desertion. It will be sufficient to hold that there is desertion and the marriage can be brought to an end. Then the last element, which is lack of consent. No consent from the other spouse, no mutual agreement. You just leave your matrimonial home. You just withdraw from cohabitation and all of that. I don't even need to explain lack of consent too much. You should understand that already. If all of these four elements are present at the same time, it will amount to desertion, which is a fact that must be established for the court to conclude that the marriage has broken down irretrievably. What is the period of time that would be enough to conclude that yes, there is desertion? The law provides that desertion must have lasted for a continuous period of at least 1 year, immediately preceding the presentation of the petition for divorce. So we're going to stop here for today. I hope this video helps you. Thank you so much for watching. See you in our next video.